Hi everybody, welcome back. Nice to be back again. So I have this is my second tutorial on painting. This piece that we're doing right here is a very popular one. I've actually sold about 7 of these, and it's, everybody wants them the exact same way. And so I change it just a little bit as I go, but it's not too much variance from the picture. So right here, I start with all the base colors. This is actually going to be a pale gold. I'm starting with a base like sand yellow acrylic, not metallic, but just a base acrylic. And I've also let this board dry probably 2.5, 3 days to make sure that, when I wiped the stain, that nothing came up. So we're going to go around the whole turtle. And if you look at the picture, the areas that are going to be that sandy color, it's the background of the turtle, the background, and the little sign background at the bottom. And don't worry too much about any of the margins at all right now. The borders, we're going to come back and paint the borders with a nice darker metallic that's going to cover it right up. Everything's going to get painted again, so worrying about your margins and things isn't a big deal right now. So I'm just going through and I'm going to scrub this stuff on as fast as I can. It's important not to leave clumps of paint. And if anybody's watched any of my other tutorials, that's a real big, easy thing to miss when doing 3D carves, because it really likes to clump up on all the ridges. So, 3D carves are easy to paint, a lot easier to paint than a canvas. You're coloring in the lines, but in some aspects, it really hurts you. Some of the things that are raised off the board, that there's no detail because we can't carve on 4-axis, so you get some flat lines that you have to kind of deal with sometimes. Just finishing painting here. I did speed this. I can't remember. This one's about 250% of actual speed right now. And for the pale gold that we'll do next, so the next coat will be a metallic coat. And you can get from Shuttle Art, if you go to Amazon, you look up Shuttle Art and you look for the metallic colors. They have a couple small samplers that are really great if you're just trying to learn this. So they're cheap, and they give you multiple colors, and they actually, in their sample set, they sell a color called pale gold in the metallic sample set. Now what's interesting is none of their big sets say pale gold, and you can't buy the pale gold in bulk. And I really like this. So right here we're putting on the pale gold. This will be the second coat on top of the regular acrylic. Normally it only takes one of these, but sometimes you have to come back and hit it again. But as I was saying, the pale gold isn't readily available in the bigger bottles. So I looked it up on the internet like anybody in the world does. I looked up and said, okay, how do I mix this color, right? Well, it's interesting. I ended up using a brown, a white, and a yellow to kind of blend this all together to make all metallic colors, and it was really darn close to the pale gold. And it's not a bad idea if you're making a color, a background, or anything that you're doing a lot of that you say, oh, okay, I might mess this up and I might have to go back and touch it up. If you mix a lot of colors, it's not a bad idea to write down what 3 colors that was made of. It's not terribly tough to mix them again to find the right color, but if you can't remember what 3 colors they were, and you're as color challenged as I am, then it's a really good idea to write those down. This is just like a 1-inch angled brush, and basically all the brushes I ever use, I'll use a like a 1-inch angled and a 1/4 inch angled, and I'll use like a 10-0 fine tipped, and then like a, I think it's, I don't even know what it's, like a 1/4 inch round brush. Sometimes I get a great big one out, but not very often. So really don't worry about, if you're new to this, don't worry about buying a whole bunch of brushes. And you can buy a whole kit with palette plates and brushes and probably some paints to get you started for probably under 25-30 bucks, and that's more than you need to do your first couple of paintings. And then you'll figure out what you really want. So it looks like we're doing a little background, second coat on the background. So this video I don't show carving. The first tutorial I think I showed carving and everything. I don't show that on this video. If you have any questions, reach out to me. So here we're going to do the shell and the paddles, and that's just, I think I showed you the bottle, it's just a metallic blue. I think I lightened it a little bit, put a little bit of white in it or a little bit of silver. But it's personal preference, right? If you like a dark shell, do a dark shell. Knowing that when you paint it, when you finish it, you'll be putting some colors on it. We'll put some highlights on the shell. We're gonna outline the lines in it. And same as my last video, if you wanted to mock the picture and do the reverse, so we would leave all the lines tan and then paint around the lines, that's your choice. Or you could go back and paint the lines back tan, or not even paint them to start with. But when I do stuff like, for some reason, it tends to be a little easier on you if you coat everything once, and that way when you shade it and things, it looks right. You're not going from a wood to a paint right away. You've got a layer of the same color in between them. And if you mess up, that's why you let those coats dry. So the background, I probably let that background dry overnight, and you don't have to, but that way if you mess up, you can take just a little brush with just a little water on it and touch it, and it's just gone. So you can just clean up your mistakes real easy. So we're going to do 2 coats of this. And you can see I kind of made some imaginary lines there based on either, you do it either based on the carve or based on the picture. So kind of pick a spot and say, okay, that looks like where it should be. And just paint as close to it as you can. You don't even have to make it perfect, because we're going to go back and outline all that stuff. And by the time this is all done and you've outlined and you've shaded and you've highlighted, some of those little mess ups or not perfect lines go away. I mean, they don't even show up. And actually, imperfection's the key. You honestly don't want to make everything too perfect, or it looks really fake. And this one's running at about 600% speed. And if I set my mind to it, I can probably do one of these in 3.5 hours. Not counting time it sits to dry, obviously. But it's like anything else, knowing that it's video cam taping it, I seem to make a few more mistakes and a little more nervous painting it. It's like somebody watching you when you're on the computer. You can type 120 words a minute unless somebody's looking over your back. Then you can't type one word without misspelling it. We all been there. Okay, just finishing up the little accents on the paddles, and you could reverse that. Like what I'm doing there, you could make the rest of it blue and the outside tan. It doesn't have to be you know, you don't have to, like right now we're already a little bit away from the picture because our lines are going to be black instead of tan lines. Right here I'm just showing you, so I picked imaginary line. It's not really imaginary, but I picked a line that I'm going to follow the contour of the head, and that's going to be the blue part. And sometimes, and there's some other videos that I'm working on for you guys that you might see, but some of the videos I'll actually take a pencil, a really light pencil, and I'll make those lines. So, and this was really small, so it's not a big deal, but if you have a big line you want to make, or a tree line, and you can't really see it on the carve, but you want to make sure it's right, take that picture and lay it right up against there and trace it, you know, cut it out or trace it on there, and just take your pencil and trace it. A lot of the really, you know, the people who can really paint, they, you know, they sketch the whole thing in charcoal or whatever on pencil on their board. They don't just randomly start painting. I think we're just second coating this now. And if anybody really looks, if somebody's watching this and says, but I just, oh, there's no way I can do it, don't, trust me, you can do it. If I can paint, you can paint. Because I'm the guy who can't cut a straight piece of paper with a scissors and my life depended on it. So this was, you know, and you just pick it up at like anything else. It's like, you know, not quite as hard as learning an instrument, but you know, in a week or two, it's amazing how fast you get a little more motor control. And once you get that, the rest is just following the picture. You don't even have to understand what you're painting, just follow the picture. So here I'm switching to like a 10-0, which is about as fine as you can get without almost going down to a pen or pencil. Just painting a black line. So I'm going to edge all the blue we just did with a black line, and then I'm going to go back and paint all the big slots or the big crevices between the turtle shells black. And it won't be perfect, and it might look kind of funny right now, but without it, you don't really have the break in those. You're not really, you know, you need to define the objects, right? So that's what we're doing. And this, I believe, is running it. Let's see. Not sure how fast that one's running. This is probably one of the longer processes of the whole thing, because you really have no choice but to slow down and trace it. And it, you know, if I was a little better, I could use a brush with a longer bristle on it, and it would hold a little more paint. But because these short brushes, they're great because you can get really precise with them, but they don't hold very much paint, so you end up going back to the palette a lot. And you guys see me doing that. I can paint about 2.5 inches, and I have to go back to the palette and reload. And you see all those little, if you look at the palette, there's all those little scrape marks right there, because you don't want to bring a glob of paint or even a drop of paint on the end of that fine tip. So I just give a quick daub, and it flattens it out, and it takes that first gloop of paint off of there. Okay, there we magically have all the outlines on the shell, and here's a close-up of the paddle, so you guys can kind of see what I do. And you honestly, if this isn't your cup of tea, you could honestly just brush that in black and then wipe it off the top. You know, you'd have to let the blue dry quite a bit. Let the blue dry overnight. Then you could paint the black with a big brush, just go right over everything and just wipe it off with your finger. And it would probably look pretty cool. You'll see me when we go to shade, you'll see me wipe a lot of stuff with my finger. It softens it up, because everything you paint, when you start painting it, you'll be like, oh man, that just stands out too much, or it looks fake, or you know, I don't really like the way it looks. But the minute you soften it, which is either by shading or a little bit of a smudge, it makes a huge difference. difference between a crystal clear high-res image or something with a little motion blur applied to it. The motion blur just really makes it look more natural. Because right now, this, although it doesn't look bad, it's still, there's hard lines there, and you're like, yeah, it doesn't look bad, no, but you know, we want it to look a little better than this. Fill in all these little fillets or fillet, whatever they call these little scales between the turtles. Just everything I can see that I think needs to have black. And look at the picture. You know, I mean, you don't have to know anything about it. Just look at the picture and say, okay, where would a black line look good at? And if you're going to shade something really, if you see a spot on the turtle that you're going to shade really dark, like some of it in the armpits and underneath the shell, if you know you're going to shade it really dark, go ahead and put a black line there, because it's hard to really shade a solid color. You end up, it just doesn't look right. So, but if you paint a line underneath it and then you shade it, just soften it with shade later, it's dark enough that you're going to say, oh, that looks pretty good. So define them all right now. That's what I'm doing. Any big black objects, just go ahead and define them. I'll do the pupil, and I'll come back and we'll make that a little bit different colors. I'm going to paint all the little lines on the head there. Come out, make it look like we meant to do that. This one's at 600% speed right now, this clip. Okay, so we'll get the outline done, and I could have done this reverse order, but you know, decide how you want to paint stuff. So this is the background, and I use that marine blue again. Then I'm just adding some black to it to darken a little bit, and then I actually added a little bit of silver to it also. And maybe no, I don't think I added any green. I can see some green in my palette over there, but I don't think I used it for the mix. But once again, there's nothing that says this water can't be black. I mean, you can make the water whatever color you want to. I'm just trying to some measure of matching the picture, not trying to make it perfect, because every one I've done is a little bit different. Just cutting in the lines. Boom, got the background done quick. So now I'm going up, and looks like I'm adding some green highlights to the paddles and the shell. I already did a little highlighting on the shell, a little highlighting on the paddles. Now I'm probably letting that dry for a little bit. Okay, so that's a metallic copper, and that was a 10-0 or 3-0, and it's unfortunate when it's sped up like this that you can't get a look at that stuff. But so I'm going to go through now and paint all the raised letters. And I'll say it again, but when you're creating these images with AI or however you're doing them, it always helps to say, hey AI, please, find the sign you like, and please raise those letters off the board just a little bit more and flatten them. And AI will do that for you. And the reason I ask them to do that is because it makes it so much easier to paint them. These are not those top life and is better, and especially the by the water in the middle are not very raised. There's got some points to them, and they are tough to paint. So you just do your best, and if you make a mistake, you just take a little angled wet brush and just wipe it right off. But this part does take some time. There's a nice reflection right there on that life. There we go. I'm just slowly but surely. I like the copper on these. I really like the metallic colors, but the copper and tan I think really are a good contrast for each other. Could be the dark blue would look good also. Yeah, a dark blue, or even a black, I think would look great. You'll see me add a lot of these little dots. Well, instead of wiping the brush off, since I know I'm going to need the paint, I'll bring it over on the brush and then dot it off, so when I go to paint it's not a big glob, but I don't have to go back to the palette so much. That's why you'll see me dot a little bit. And I have no idea if that's the right thing to do or not. I have no clue. But that's what I found works. Because I am about the farthest thing away from an artist as you could ever have. I think I failed finger painting in school, so. And this one also is at about 600% speed. Which I'm amazed at. I thought it would look a little faster than this, but maybe I just work that slow. Doesn't feel like I'm working that slow. I should have a clock running right next to this thing so we could actually see the time. I probably could have cut a little more of this out. This is the kind of stuff that slides it into the oddly satisfying category. The people that like to watch grass grow, and people mowing lawns and power washing and that kind of stuff. It is satisfying. This is, I just looked at the clip, this is 800% speed. That's probably why I didn't cut any more out of it. I figured it would be quicker than this. Giving these small ones a second coat. So I'm going to switch to my small 1/4 inch angle brush probably for the water, the bigger letters. Yep. There we go. Because if you get the right angle or you have a really light touch, you can, you know, if you don't rush it, you just barely make contact with it. Just don't push down too hard, and it's not too tough to paint these raised letters. When I first started doing this, you know, push the brush way down, and I just thought I'm never going to be able to freehand paint these, and after a while you're like, you know, you just kind of get a feel for it, and then it's just not too bad after that. So I'm sailing through this one pretty quick, and that'll take a second coat too. mean, I find it, and you guys will too. You know, if you find making a line in one direction with the board at a certain angle, just make them all, and just turn the board and make the rest of them. And so there's the whole thing painted. The letters. We're gonna do a quick second coat here. Quick is relevant. I think I definitely should have cut this down a little bit more. The next one, I'm actually working on it's a framed, it's an AI 3D framed carving of ducks flying out of the water, and it's pretty cool. It's not, I like the ducks, but I didn't think it would, you know, but it's amazing how many people like those outdoor scenes. I've painted a lot, and I didn't record any of them, but if you look on my site, on Facebook page, you can see a lot of the stuff I painted. But unfortunately, I wasn't recording anything at that point. But I've done a lot of, you know, landscapes. So here's the lettering painted. Right here, I'm showing you where I'm going to shade. And that was really fast, so if you needed to go back and stop it, go ahead. But I'm showing you the small areas, and right now I just explained to you that whenever you know, shade something, one of the tricks is that I learned, and once again, this is just the way I learned, I think it works best, is we're shading that tan, right? It's basically a tan. So I'm just taking brown and shading it really dark. I mean, it's almost black, but you don't want to start with black. Black would look bad right there. I mean, we use black for the outline, and that's fine, but if you shaded this in black, you would not be happy with it. So I kind of start with a light, you know, because you don't want to do your heavy shading in one coat. So I look at the picture, and I start shading in the spots where the shade should be. A combination of a brush that you'll see me, I dab it, and then I take I get all the paint off of it. I mean, you almost don't want any paint on your brush at all when you go to touch the piece. But yes, it's a combination. You'll get the feel for it. Just don't put the brush on wet with any wet paint at all, and rub it in there, and then wipe it off with your finger. It's another reason why you want to let stuff dry in between, so you're not wiping the other coat off. And just, you know, just rub it on and wipe it off, and just kind of mess with it until it looks right. And this is just the first shading, and we may not touch some of this again, but if it needs darker shading, plan on coming back and doing a second or third coat right in that area. Don't try to take that one area right to that dark that fast. It just won't happen for you. You'll end up with whole big globs of paint, and it won't look very soft, and you'll be unhappy. Here's one of those areas that's really not defined. It's hard to know what to do with, so I shade them usually, and you can see I shade from the bottom and just brush stroke up, and that works pretty well for those, you know, looks more natural because it looks like the little pad knobs come up. So here I'm just shading lines, shading everything on the picture that I think needs some shading. And it's a process, and you'll never think it's finished, and you'll keep messing with it, but just get to a spot right there. And actually this is black, so right now I'm just adding some black spots to the shell, touching up some of the lines, because if you look at that picture's got a few black spots in it. It's just, you know, Mother Nature, or bumps or bruises, whatever they might be, just little black spots. So, you know, try to add things like that if you see them. The back of the paddle. So I'm just putting a second coat on to darken some of those areas that I think should be a little darker. I always shade around at least three, you know, you don't really always want to shade around the whole piece, because if there's a light direction, it's not going to be, usually you can't see shading around the whole piece with light direction. You know, it's got close, it's having some shadow, it's posting some shadow from one side to the other. It's not an omni view where it's just the whole thing's a shadow normally. So if you shade the whole thing, it looks a little funny, or all the outsides of it. It's like a box. If you put a box up there, it's going to look a lot better with, you know, 2 sides of the bottom shaded, or 3 even, with a lighter. But you've shaded the whole box, it's just going to look a little silly. So you can see at some point I went back and I darkened up or added a second coat of shading to its neck up there. You can see how that's darker. And if you look at the picture, you can kind of see what we're doing. And this stuff, these metallics, I mean, they probably in 5 minutes are dry that you can start second coating on. Now, they're not dry enough that you can say, okay, well, if I mess up, I can get it wet, because that's not long enough. So here, we're going to jump into, I think we're pretty happy with our turtle now. We're going to start painting all the background stuff. So we've got a tree, and you can't see it very well. I'll get that image off the screen there. And I'm going to paint the palm trees. I actually just took a green and darkened it right there, because you can, you know, we're probably going to take the lighter green of that same shade. So if we want that green, I darken that green, and when I come back, I'll put that same color without darkening it for highlights. Same way if I'm doing trees or something, you do everything in dark. And I did speed this up quite a bit, so you can see we got the trees painted. I did the trunks of the tree in a brown metallic. I did the little grass below there in the same dark green I did the palm trees. Then I did a kind of a darkish brown for that little sand layer between the water and the trees. And then I took a black and I did the seagulls. And right now I'm just adding, I took some metallic white, and I'm just kind of shading in those waves a little bit. You know, could we make them exactly like the picture? Sure. If you want them exactly like the picture, you could spend a little bit more time, and even add some more color blues to it, and you could get some cool effects. But for this one, it just kind of shaded off from the tips with the white and went over it a couple times, and to me that was good enough. And you got to remember with these that the lacquer, you know, the metallics and lacquer are just made for each other. And it just makes all these color changes and all these little bitty tiny things that we're doing now, they really makes them pop when you spray them. I don't recommend doing urethanes on them. Urethane, I've had, you know, if you let it dry for a long time, you're probably okay. But I've had urethanes actually kind of change the color hues of some colors on these metallics. And that's a spray, like a spar urethane or some spray urethane. I'm sure there's some out there that somebody will say, oh, I have great luck with, and I'm sure they do. And the urethane's great for outdoor use and some other things, and it's probably a little bit harder. But I'd be curious to try some polyurethane too, if this was going to be a heavy used, a piece that I knew was going to take a lot of abuse. The lacquer's okay, but it's not that resilient of a finish. I mean, these are meant to be hung on the wall. You know, I have made a few outdoor, like street signs, and I do polyurethane those, but they're, you know, mainly a couple colors, and that's it. It's wood, you know, stained wood or black and white, or really basic stained colors that we don't care if the colors aren't perfect. And spray urethane is awesome for that. Put 2 or 3 coats of that on, and they're almost waterproof. And if you're worried about whatever you're doing, you just grab another board and test them, you know. Don't be afraid to paint something, and don't be afraid to have some scratch wood around when you're making this, when you carve this wood, or and I would be happy too if somebody would like to purchase some of these carved pieces without, you know, either without staining or stained and ready to go for you to paint, or, you know, however you want them. I'd be happy to make some for some people. But yeah, but nothing else, have another piece of similar wood that you stained or whatever you did to just test on before you start. That way you get a little confidence. Okay, now we're going to paint all these little bitty coral and things. And I tell you what, I've spent way too much time thinking about what colors to make them. So anymore, I kind of just go with it, right? I'll try to make the coral most one or two colors. If there was 3 or 4 on each side, I may mix them up. But like here, I think I'm going to do silver on both sides. And these are going to look kind of funny. So you're going to paint these and you go, they just look, you know, they look really fake and kind of plasticky and they don't fit the picture and they just, but when we're done, we're going to go back and we're going to highlight all of these and then we're going to shade them too. So they'll look, you know, like these silver coral right here. We'll go back and we'll take a little copper and we'll just lightly highlight the top of it, which essentially adds a light source to it. You know, it's quote unquote not a real light source, but it adds a little highlight that kind of fools your eyes thinking it's a light source. And I usually shade first because then your light source is more apparent. So if you know, make sure you shade before you add your highlight. Because sometimes you go back and shade, and you could do it either way. It still looks really good, but, and I don't know which way I did it here, but I try, if I remember, I try to shade and then highlight because you don't want to dull your highlights. But yeah, these will look a little corny while you're doing them. But when we shade them, you'll go, oh, that really looks nice. And like I said, they're not that hard to do. Don't worry about getting them perfect to the background. Just paint the very tops of them because you won't, you know, who cares? You know, just things like this you want to cut in well, like around the beige, but all the coral and all that other stuff, I don't care if it's painted right down to the edge of the next piece or not. So these are the colors I chose for this board. Like it or hate it. I'm sure it's different than the other board, the other 6 I've done. So I'm actually, let's see, what am I doing here? I think I'm second coating the brown on that little star. Second coating. Okay, object shading. So I took, and once again we essentially have a blue background. So I took blue and I darkened it way down. Not a black, but it looks almost like a black if you could see the palette. And now I'm shading all these objects. And we're gonna paint it. You see some at the bottom. There's some funny looking stuff, but we're gonna paint the border, so don't worry about the shade in the bottom. Up here, I shade all around the trees, so the trees look like they're shaded or shadowed from one side. And I actually make some little lines. That's what I'm doing, making little just vertical lines in the trunk of the tree. And it's little stuff like that you know, after you're done, you go, wow, it really looked good before, but it really looks good now. So let's see what I'm going to paint here. I don't remember. And this was just 3 days ago. So yeah, so we're just, once again, so you can see in the palette, that's just a really dark blue. So I'm just shading, and I basically dab the brush, don't let it be wet, and get it dark down in the crevices. And then the last little, right when I think of the brush is going to be empty, I go right over the top of the piece because we want to shade the edges and soften the tops of it. Because if you leave it all shiny, you're not going to like it as much. You always see, you can look at the difference between the left side and the right side. Look at the coral. You see the right side just kind of stands out too much and it doesn't look very natural because the left side's already shaded. And now I'm shading the bottom of these trees, palm trees, and they start to pop a little bit. And this is not difficult at all. It just takes time. I'm just shading some of the waves. It just makes a little break a little more apparent. Takes some of the harshness around it. And I usually shade the whole edge of the piece. It just makes it just adds a nice touch to it. You know, not much at all. I mean, enough that you can barely even see it. You can see me constantly wiping my finger or shading the edge around the border. See, this board had a big knot hole in it. But it, you know, it adds character too, because these are really beautiful, even non-painted. and you'll see the back is, there's really pretty wood. It's kind of a shame to paint them, but on the other hand, you know, it looks pretty darn good when they're painted too. So some here I just got that coral shaded, looks pretty good. I'm being really careful shading around that shell, and you can see I just a really light, it's so light, but it makes all the difference in the world. And now I think I'm adding the highlights. You can see I've got some copper and some silver there. I'm going back and I added a little silver to the copper stuff, a little silver to that shell, a little silver to the gold shell. And you basically, once again, you get you get your brush almost dry, and you just dab it, and you can smear it with your finger if you want to. You don't want it to look like you painted it on. You want it to look like it's just a light reflection. And we jumped way ahead here to painting the border. And I apologize, this is kind of small here, because actual size I actually was a little bit out of frame when I was painting it. But you can still see pretty well what I'm doing. I'm basically just painting the outside edge. And that's a metallic copper that matches the other border. And then when we're all done, we're going to do the very outside border a antique brass, just because that's what I like to do. And you could do any color in the world, obviously. There's a lot of really cool metallic colors out there. And if you buy one of those really, not cheap, but one of those small starter sets that comes with brushes and everything you need to get going, you'll spend 10 minutes trying to figure out what colors to paint. It's too many choices. But so there, we're just going around with the copper, and it's hard to tell in this picture, but trust me that even now, I mean, it looks a little too fresh or plasticky or not quite real at all. Not that the sign looks realistic, but we'll go back, and we're done, we'll shade the border too. And it'll just be a random shading, shade light some of the edges and things, and just we'll soften the whole border as well, because that's something that's easy to forget. You do this whole beautiful piece, and you spend all this time, and you say, okay, I'm just going to paint the border, and you paint it, and it just I don't know what the word for it is, but it doesn't look real great without shading it. So there, I probably saw a few little spots on the copper that some of the tan is showing through in those letters. It's just probably one more coat. Oh, here we go, antique brass. So now I'm going around and I'm just doing the very outside edge, and it's a shame that it's so far away here, but I just did that outside edge. We're just gonna do that in antique brass. I might go back and see if I can, because I need to compile this and render it, so before I render it, I'll go back and see if I can blow this up. So if I'm talking about this and it's bigger in the screen, just ignore me. It's kind of tough to see right now. So basically, there it is. We're gonna do I believe we're gonna do shading. So I took the antique brass, I'm using that and just darkening the antique brass, because if you use pure black, it would not look good. But it almost looks black. It's just antique brass darkening, and I'm gonna shade all of that. And it takes you 2 or 3, 4 minutes, but it really makes a difference. It hides some of your edge imperfections for one, and it gives a little rustic look and a little shadowing look. It really makes the sign look really nice. I believe we're getting close here. Just adding a little more shading. I'll probably, I think I'm gonna do the outside edge of the board quick.
Don't you cry. You know there'll come a day where I come visit you at home.
Little second coat on the top.
The same old now welcome sound, population getting by, crossing that county line.
So yeah, so there we are. We're all finished. Quick lacquer the back of it. I usually give it 2 coats of lacquer on the back, let it dry in between. Second coat, world's fastest lacquer coats. Same on the front, usually only takes 2 coats. You see a lot of shaking there, that can was about to run out. And I usually mix up the direction on these. And there we go, that's actually a pretty nice, came out really well. So there we go, everybody. Thanks for watching, I appreciate it. Let me know in the comments if you want me to see something else you'd like to see painted.